tonight we are going to give you about an hour and a quarter's worth of content. We're going to try and finish about 8:15, so you've still got some of your evening left. And what we're going to be sharing with you tonight is how to increase your property portfolio, specifically HMOs, but actually what you learned tonight you could apply to really any form of investing through using other people's money. Now, this is a topic that I know scares some people, and for other people, they feel really nervous about doing anything about this, and other people feel it's just not right, and they get into a kind of desperation mindset about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindset as well, because I think that's part of the key to opening the door to using other people's money, is understanding your own mindset around it and working with that. Now, before we get going and I'll start to share the content, what I'd just really quickly like to know, if you could just put in the chat panel, just let us know, have you raised money from other people before? Now, it might not be for property, it might be for business, it might be for some other thing that you've raised money for, but just put yes in the chat panel if you have raised money from somebody else ever in your life. So we've got Daniel saying the bank, he's done it from the bank. Ria's done it, she has, yes, great. Sarah's done it. Azim has done it. Oliver hasn't. Jackie has the bank. Sophie's done it from the bank, fantastic. Sarah's borrowed some money from her dad for a car. Shaz has done it with family and friends, fantastic. That's great. So quite a lot of people have already got some experience of doing it, which is wonderful. Victoria hasn't done it, but would love to. So that's why you're here tonight, Victoria. That's great. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got a wide range of experience and knowledge about this. So I will get into the PowerPoint now and share with you my screen. Let's start at the beginning. That's always a good place to start, isn't it? Great. So just let me know if you can see the screen. If you don't mind just putting yes in the chat panel so that I know that you can see me. That'd be great. I can see some people are saying yes, yes, yes. Right, that's fantastic. Good. I always like to make sure that the technology is working well. It always helps, doesn't it? Okay, so let's just start with why. Why do you need to use other people's money? So I'd be really interested to know why you're at the point of coming on this webinar this evening and you're ready to start using other people's money. So again, this is a bit over to you guys. Let me know why. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a few moments to have a think about why you need to start to use other people's money. Okay, great answers coming in here. So Sarah wants to scale up faster. Yeah, that's a really good reason. A lot of people feel exactly like that. They've kind of stopped and they need to go bigger. They want to scale up, they want to make more money. You can secure more properties, says Sophie. Sarah wants to get her second HMO in the pipeline before the first one is complete. Whoa, love it. Daniel wants to be able to buy stuff when he doesn't have money of his own. So how is he going to do that? He might have the knowledge, the experience, but he doesn't have the money. So using other people's money makes sense. Ria is also wanting to scale up. Shaz wants to grow their portfolio faster than just using her own money, but also giving friends and family a better return than they get in the banks. Fantastic. A win-win. That's brilliant. I love it. So lots of very, very good reasons there as to why you might want to use other people's money. And those are all really good answers. So why do you need money from an investor? It could be because you've run out of money. It could be because you don't actually want to use your own money. It gives you leverage because you can create more with less of your own, use somebody else's. It reduces your financial risk, doesn't it? If you use somebody else's money, it's not your personal financial risk that you're putting on the line. But we will come and talk about risk in a moment, because in this day and age, we have to be quite careful about that. The banks, now when we talk about bank lending, of course, it can be expensive, or you might not be able to get bank lending on certain projects. So you need to have a pipeline of investors who can lend you some money to invest with. There's another comment in the chat panel, you can focus on finding deals when the partner could attract investors. Yes, exactly. Really good point there. So focusing on the deals could be where you put your energies rather than finding the money. You can tap into knowledge, experience, and wealth that your investor has, because there are many high net worth or sophisticated investors who are already experienced in business. They understand how to read a profit and loss sheet, a balance sheet. They understand what the importance is of cash flow in a business. So their knowledge, their experience, and their wealth is worth tapping into. So there's lots of really good reasons why you would want to use investor money. It also recession-proofs you and them. Partnerships are very powerful. Done correctly, they can be very, very good for recession-proofing. Because yes, one of you could be the one that funds the deals and the other one could be the one that finds the deals. And if you've been in property for a while, or you've been doing this kind of on your own, property can be quite a lonely game. Certainly when I first started out, there was no online training, there was nothing, there were no networking groups, there was nothing for me to go and learn from. And you don't know really whether you're doing everything correctly. And not only that, but you don't know if you are doing the things the best way. And a partnership that is profitable can really solve some of those problems. So you're using the skills of somebody else and they're using your skills as well. Okay, second question here. So here's another question. Why do investors want to work with you? And note that I haven't said why would investors want to work with you? Why do they want to work with you? You just haven't found those people yet, but they're out there. So why do investors want to work with you? This sometimes is a bit of a harder question to answer. You're going to have to really dig deep here, guys. Why do investors want to work with you? Put your answers in the chat panel. It'd be great to hear from you. So Sarah says they're not making any interest in the bank. Yeah, exactly. In fact, there is a rumour that we're going to have negative interest rates later in the year. So that is going to be a real change, isn't it, for people who have money sitting in the bank. Daniel, this is very good. Great. Love it, Dan. They're confident I can return their principal and interest. So there's a trust relationship already there. They're already confident that Daniel can return the principal and the interest. And in the meantime, he can use the money to do something worthwhile for himself. Jackie's saying they'd like to have a good return on their money. Yes, you know, the clue is in the name, isn't it? They're investors, so they want to get a return on their money. Sarah says, we're relatable. We're not a huge faceless organisation. So absolutely, there's something personable about it. They can come and see your properties. They can come and touch the property. They can come and walk around the property because it's real, isn't it? It's tangible. It's not just a paper asset. It's not just a promise of something in the future. It's something here and now. Steve, this is a really good point from Steve. To learn alongside you as well as to earn a return. So absolutely, many investors are wondering, what do you know they don't? What is it that you've got that they haven't? And for some investors who perhaps been investing in business or other forms of assets for many years, may still find property one of those areas which is a little bit mysterious. And you've got a bit of an edge on them because you're here tonight, because I bet you already have some knowledge and experience in property, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So this is a great time for you because you can position yourself to be ready to use their money wisely, but also to help them out. Another comment here, because you bring off-market secured deals. Absolutely, that's a really powerful tool as well, because investors are always looking for deals that are secured, deals that are not on the open market, deals that they can get with some certainty, so they don't have to waste their time doing lots and lots of viewings and looking at lots and lots of property details. Okay, so here's some ideas from me. Return on your money, return on their money, which we've already said. Interest in the bank account, shockingly bad. It might be they don't have enough time to look for property deals. So off-market deals is great for those kind of investors, but actually sometimes what they want, even above and beyond that, is a person. They want to develop that relationship with an individual that they know, they like, and they trust, so they can get really great deals from that person who is busy looking for those deals. They might be ignorant about property investing. They just have never really understood it. They don't know what is possible and what isn't. They don't know the rules and regulations around HMOs, for example. They don't understand the tax regime. So what you have, and you might consider yourself to be a newbie, you might consider yourself to be a beginner, but you know, don't underestimate what you already have. Don't underestimate your knowledge that you already have, because for many investors, you're 100 steps ahead of them. Now, investors will often want security to understand how they can get their money back and what happens if a deal goes wrong. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight so that you can give them security on their money. They want to work with someone else. They know that working alone, treading this path alone can be a lonely furrow. And if you've experienced that, you'll also know that sometimes it can be pretty hard doing this on your own. And having the backing of an investor who, it might be they just want their return on their money, but actually they're probably looking for a relationship with you as well, a business relationship. Well, they might be wanting more. That's an added bonus. But usually a business relationship is actually what makes them tick. It might be that they've got a business or a lifestyle that makes it hard for them to get into property. Maybe a very demanding job, maybe they travel a lot with their job, maybe they've got caring responsibilities, maybe they've tried and it hasn't worked, and they feel nervous about doing it on their own. And having somebody who's got some knowledge against their investment pot may be just the thing that they need. They might be looking for a pension. You know, this could be the problem, that after COVID, they're starting to think longer term about what their future looks like. So it could be that they're looking for something that is long term, and possibly it's not a short term cash flow return they're looking for. So understanding the needs and the desires and the preferences of your investor is key. And as Steve said earlier, they are looking to watch and learn. So that's really powerful, that you can help them because you have got stuff they can learn from you. I know you might not believe it, but it's absolutely true. Now, a few years ago, when I ran out of money, at the time, I thought it was disaster. I thought, that's it, my property journey is over. I'm never going to be able to invest in anything ever again. I'm just going to have to wait for about 10 years before I save up a deposit and go again. And within a matter of 3 months, I had raised over £250,000 for continuing investing in HMOs. And later on, with the benefit of hindsight and wisdom, which comes with age, and many, many grey hairs and fine lines, it was this phrase which I coined. It's when you run out of your own money that your learning really begins. And it may sound a little bit corny, but it's absolutely true that when you don't actually have your own money anymore, maybe you never had it, or maybe you've had it, but you've invested it and it's used up. This is really the key step for you growing your property portfolio. It's the key step for you making money. It's the key step to you creating income for yourself and others. So when I started, these are my first 2 HMOs. They don't look particularly exciting, do they? The one on the left is a 4-bed HMO, and it made me about £800 a month in cash flow, in profit. And the one on the right, would you believe it, is a 7-bed HMO, the large 3-bed terrace. And I'm going to share with you a little bit later some of the tricks that we applied to this particular one to create 7 beds out of it. They're all 10 metres squared or more. 3 of them have en suites. 4 of them have en suites. 3 of them share a bathroom, and it's got a large kitchen diner. And this one makes me about £1,400 a month net profit. So both of those HMOs were great because they allow me to more or less replace my income, and I could give up my job. But having done that, I then stopped because I had no more money to invest with. And I didn't know what I'm going to share with you tonight, what you'll learn tonight. I didn't know it at this point. But since then, since September 2013, pop, 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 I learned some things about working with investors that changed my life. You see, 2 HMOs was great. It was brilliant. It allowed me to give up my job. I was, to all intents and purposes, financially free. My husband was still working and he was desperate to get out of his job, but I was free. So yeah, you know, the most important person in the relationship, no, not really, had achieved what she wanted, but I was stuck I was absolutely stuck. So it was only from doing some of the things I'm going to share with you tonight that you could go out and do that I then created a much, much bigger portfolio. So since then, I've raised over £5 million in private finance. I've done equity partnerships. I've borrowed money in the form of loans. I've done developments. Developed over 35 HMOs. I've got 2 commercial properties. I've got 2 more in the pipeline. And I've even created a training program to help others do this. So I'll share with you very briefly some information on that later. But tonight I want you to focus on where you are. I want you to think where you are now and where you want to be. And of course, I'm talking the period of 7 years. But actually, it was the first 2 years after 2013 where I really made the biggest impact. That was where I was absolutely hungry to grow the portfolio. And since then, I've done fewer developments every year, in terms of numbers, purely because we have enjoyed our lifestyle. And we've been doing some slightly bigger projects as well, which take obviously longer to get over the line, which is very exciting because they give great cash flow as well, and are more commercial in nature. But for the first couple of years, all I focused on was getting an HMO portfolio up and running that allowed me to leave my job and then allowed Andy, my husband, to leave his job too. So I want to really reiterate to you tonight that if that's your position, if you're looking to get out of your job, or you might not even have 2 HMOs to start with, tonight is going to really help you to know what to do next and how to learn to go to that next level. I spoke earlier about money mindset, and this is so key to understand how to approach this subject of money, because there's really lots of different ways in which we can kind of speak to ourselves about money mindset and the messages that we speak to ourselves about. And over the next 48 hours, what I'd like you to do is to become more aware of what your brain, the messages your brain is telling you about money. So do you have a scarcity mindset, or do you have an abundance mindset? Because these are some of the thoughts that people say to me all the time, and I've said to myself. Number one, this is a big one. I get this a lot of time. I can't raise money from an investor because I don't have enough experience. Oh, well, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Because you haven't got experience. Well, that's it. You might as well give up and go home then. Yeah, because you've got to have experience, haven't you? You've absolutely got to have experience to raise money from an investor. Do you? Do you really? Okay, well, look, let's move on from that, because that's a bit of a tricky one. So we'll go on to the one on the bottom right. You need money to make money. Well, it does help if you have money you can use it, you can leverage it, but not everybody with money makes money. Some people lose money. Do you really need money to make money, or is it something else you perhaps need? Okay, well, we'll come back to that one as well. I don't know anyone with money to invest. Oh, right, yeah, because really there's nobody, is there, who's got any money tied up in a bank account, or who perhaps runs a business and has got some retained profits that aren't doing much, or is maybe retired with a very, very healthy pot of money that they're looking to do something a bit more exciting with. Those people don't exist, do they? Or do they? Maybe you don't know that you actually do know them. And lockdown, oh, COVID-19, it's so difficult because we can't be in the same room as people, we can't network, we can't see the colour of their eyes. I can't find any investors during lockdown. So the whole COVID-19, that's it, investing is out the window. I'm not going to do it until COVID's over. And then actually I'm not going to do it until Brexit, because Brexit's the next big thing. So Brexit, COVID. Okay, well, how long are you going to wait? Okay, how long are you going to wait to find these elusive investors? Well, let me just share with you some really encouraging stories of other people who have overcome this money mindset. Charlotte worked with me about 3 years ago, and she had no experience at all in HMOs. All she'd done was my 2-day HMO intensive course, and within 10 days, she had raised £150,000 from a sophisticated investor, and she had no experience. She didn't even have any other rental property. And I'm going to show later what she did and how she did it. If she can do it, you can do it. Keith had no money of his own. He set up a JV with a work colleague who was really, really busy, but also had quite a lot of money. He was a high net worth individual. And together they did 3 HMO developments. Now, Keith has gone on to do other property developments since then. But those 3 HMOs gave him a standing with the bank. They gave him credibility. They gave him understanding and knowledge. Really, really powerful. He didn't use his own money. He used his work colleagues' money, but they set up a JV to do it. Mick, well, you know, he was also somebody who said, well, I don't know anybody, Wendy. I can't, you know, who do I know? But by telling people what he did, by being quite open about what he was doing, by sharing some of the details and the deals that he was seeing, and doing this in the right way, and I'm going to tell you how to do this in the right way later. He wasn't promoting on social media, he wasn't promoting this on Facebook. He was working in a circle of family and friends that he already knew. He spoke to everyone that he knew, and he raised £600,000 for his deals, his next deals in his pipeline. And then little old me, over the last 6 weeks, I've actually just been offered another £50,000. They have offered me over £200,000 in the last 6 weeks to invest in property. And these are people who are not looking to necessarily have any share in the property. We're going to set it up in a way that's legal and compliant, but it means that I can go out and do some great deals. And we've got a couple of deals in the pipeline right now, and that money is going to come in incredibly handy. Now, you might say, Wendy, how do I get started? And we're going to come to that. I'm going to share with you how you can get started. But what I want you to do is think about your own money mindset. Think about what are the limiting beliefs that hold you back from speaking about what you do, from dealing with people, maybe from just starting on a very, very simple basis. All these people, they've done it. And I believe that you can do it too. I believe that anybody can do this, because time and time again, I've seen from my clients how they've gone out, applied themselves, taken the learning, and done it, and raised the money. You've probably seen this quote from Henry Ford: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And you know, the head of the Ford Motor Company, remember, the Model T Ford is called the Model T Ford because he had to get from A to T before it was right. Okay, it wasn't Model A, it wasn't even the Model B Ford that got out of the door. It's the Model T Ford. That's where he made his money and where he became famous. So there were lots of iterations of the car that made Henry Ford famous. But one of the big things, of course, we remember him for now is some of his fantastic quotes and the way that he managed the company and the business and grew it in Michigan. And this is really a fantastic quote that I do remember myself, because the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about what the possibilities are, really shapes what we end up doing and how far we end up growing. So what I want to dive right into now is to talk about the different types of investor and the kind of types of investor that are good for HMO investing. So before we start, I want to just get a bit of an understanding about you. So in the chat panel, would you mind just saying whether you are investing in HMOs? Are you here tonight to use the money that you raise to invest in HMOs? If so, put yes. If you're not here to invest in HMOs, if that's not your chosen vehicle, which is fine, just put no and then tell me what it is you are going to be investing in. I've got quite a few yeses so far. Got a good HMO community going on, which is great. Yeah, Steve says yes, Jackie says yes, Oliver, yes, Sarah, yes, second Sarah, yes, Azim, yes, Shaz, yes. Fantastic, great, okay, that's cool. So it sounds like everybody is going to be doing this. And what I would say is once you learn how to do this on HMOs, and HMOs are a brilliant strategy to do it because there's so many benefits to investing in HMOs. Dan says no, he doesn't know enough about HMOs yet. You will, Dan. But once you learn to do it on an HMO, it's a skill that you will take with you for the rest of your life. And what I've learned is that when you know how to raise money on an asset like an HMO, you can also do it for a commercial building or a development deal or a new build or even your business. So whatever it is that you're looking to raise money for, the skills that you'll learn through doing it on an HMO will serve you the rest of your life. So it's really worth learning about this, and it's really worth taking a risk and getting out there and starting to find that network, develop your network around you. So there are four main types of investor. You have the straight loan or the cash investor. So this is somebody who wants to lend you money and who's happy to just take a return, an interest return on that money. The second type is a transactional investor. So this might be somebody who wants to do a deal with you, but they would like to buy your services. So they might want you to source, they might want you to project manage, they might want you to tenant that property. And in certain areas that can work well, in certain niches that can be very effective. But generally what would happen in that particular example is that you won't necessarily have much of a long-term ownership deal in that property. But I'm going to go into a bit more depth in a moment. The third type is a JV partner. So this is when you're sharing the risks and the rewards with that JV partner. And this could be for a one-off project, a short-term project. Or you could have a JV partner when you are sharing the risks and the rewards long-term. And that has a slightly different flavour to it. So let's just dig down into each of those different types of investor. So generally, a cash investor is looking for a better return on their cash. They've got money sitting in the bank or sitting in a savings account, or maybe even sitting in a cash ISA. Now, while the cash ISA gives them some good tax breaks because any increases they have on that are not subject to capital gains tax, it's still maybe actually a very, very slow way of building up their wealth. And they're looking and seeing property, and then you come along and start chatting to them about what you're doing. And the light bulb goes on and they think, well, actually, I could make a bit more money by investing with this person, lending them my money, and we could do a bit of a deal. Now, when it comes to a cash investor, I would recommend that you start with family and friends first. I'll talk about the rules, the FCA regulations in a moment, if you're going to do this with people who are not your family and friends. But family and friends is much safer. It's safer for you and it's safer for them. Now, you do still need some paperwork. And I'm going to, tonight, as a bit of a bonus for staying on, you will get a bundle of paperwork that we're going to email to you that is going to give you the information that you need to simply fill out, and then you can use that if you raise money, cash money, from family and friends. It keeps them safe, it keeps you safe, it's a legal agreement that allows you to raise money. So I would absolutely recommend that you have a written agreement to tell your investor how much money they're lending to you, how much you're borrowing from them, and what the percentage interest rate is on an annual basis, and what I would call the schedule for repayment. You might decide, for example, to repay them every month a capital amount and the interest, or you might decide to just pay them the interest, or you might say to them, could I repay you the whole lot at the end of a year, or at the end of 2 years even? So there needs to be a bit of discussion with the investor to decide what they would like, what's going to work best for both of you. And it partly depends on how you could then use the money. Now remember, this is a personal loan. So in terms of security, there may be something here to think about in terms of what you can give to the investor in terms of a security. And I've known people to give jewelry, cars, all sorts of things, to name that as the security against the loan. But this is a personal loan. Then if you have a limited company through which you're investing, you would then take that money and put it into the company to utilize for your investing. Now, do remember that if you're going to go for a mortgage, or if you're going to go for further lending against that money, this will all have to be cleared through money laundering processes. So the bank is going to ask you, where did the money come from? So having the paperwork lined up is always an extremely helpful thing to show, to demonstrate where the money has come from. Remember also that if you are borrowing the money from parents, there are other ways in which that money can be used differently, i.e. in the form of a gift, which parents can then gift to you. But there are some tax considerations with regard to inheritance tax and so on, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but it's something to bear in mind that there are still a few areas to navigate when you're borrowing money on a cash basis. But the benefit is, particularly if you're not borrowing a huge amount of money, you can use their money, for example, for a refurb. You could use their money to secure, for example, a rent-to-rent deal. You could use their money to set up your business. So there's lots of ways in which you can use even a small amount, a small pot of cash that can start to get the ball rolling in your business. What I've also found is that when somebody starts to invest their cash, if you do what you say you're going to do and you deliver and you give them their interest and give them their capital back, guess what? They give it all to you back again and say, please use it again, because they still can't get any more money in the bank. So you had this, Ian, recently, didn't you, with one of your investors?
I did indeed. I get it all the time, actually. You know, I've recently refinanced 2 projects, and both investors have said, I don't want the money back. And would you believe as well, I've had my dad's good friends, we've had their money for 5 years, never been able to give them it back. And their money, actually, interestingly, that's allowed us to, our company, to purchase 3 HMOs. So how crazy is that? You know?
Amazing.
And the great thing is as well, little share, the money that we've paid them back in interest, they have went on a world cruise. They have had new windows, a new conservatory. So it's good to think their capital, it makes you feel really good, because normally in the bank right now, you'd be getting peanuts in your savings. So you know, we've tried to give them it back loads of times and they don't want it, which is a good problem to have.
Okay, so the next one is a transactional investor. Thanks, Ian. That's a great story. I love that story. So this is somebody who is looking for some security via a property, and they might be wanting to use your skills to help them source a property, maybe refurb, maybe get it tenanted. And this is an investor who wants to have the security of the property in their own name or their limited company. Now, for some people, because they don't know how to deal with transactional investors, they say, oh no, I can't do that. That's not the kind of investment I want. But actually, we've got a very, very successful partnership with somebody who is exactly structured in this way. So the transactional investor buys the property in their own name. So we might source the property for them. They buy their property actually in their limited company name. They buy the property. So they have ultimate security on the property. In fact, we're the ones who don't have the security. They have the security. But then what we would do is we would set up a services agreement between our limited company and their limited company. And we will then run the refurb, and we will then set up the tenancies, and we will then collect the rents. And we then do a 50-50 split on the income, on the profits. And the agreement is that any growth in the capital value as a result of the refurb, we are also entitled to after a set period of time. So this is a very good model because it allows the investor to have the security on the property. It allows you to have income on the property because you're managing the rental income, so you have control of that. And you can always set up something like an RX1 or a deed of trust, which gives you further security on that property. But what it means is the balance of risk is much more evenly spread, and it satisfies the FCA rules, and it allows you to get invested in property, to have an income from property, but also to have a claim on some of the capital increase in that property as well, because actually, after all, it's your hard work that's going to be doing that, probably doing that refurb or managing the builders. So this is a bit of an unusual model. It's one that we promote, it's one that we teach people about, because it can be a very powerful way to do it without falling foul of any rules and regulations. Now, with a joint venture partner, JV of course stands for joint venture. I had to learn that very early on. In fact, it was my joint venture partner who once came up to me. I met him at a networking event, and he sidled up to me, and I was telling the group, I'd been telling the group about my 2 HMOs, and he came up to me during the coffee break and said, so, I've got some money to invest. I was like, okay. He said, yeah, do you fancy doing a JV? I went, yeah, sounds really good, yeah. What's a JV? I had no idea what it meant. So he had to explain it to me. Oh, what an idiot I was. I told you, I just knew nothing. I just knew nothing. Anyway, fortunately, he was a bit more experienced, particularly with single buy-to-lets than I was, but he didn't have any HMOs. So he was looking to work with somebody who had some experience of HMOs, and we formed a joint venture partnership, which actually was a long-term joint venture partnership. But you might meet somebody who says, well, look, I'm willing to dip my toes in the water. I'm willing to work with you, but I'm not sure whether this is going to be a long-term partnership or not. In which case, this is the kind of deal where adding value and potentially selling out after a few years might be what the investor is looking for. So you have to just kind of be mindful of that. But this might be a case of finding a project where you can add value and then exit in 2 or 3 years' time. It might be, of course, you might want to buy them out at that point. Again, that can be a very good way of doing a JV. So this would be an individual who's looking for one project at a time. You would share the capital and the risk because you set up an SPV, special purpose vehicle, which is really a limited company. And then you're both directors and you both run that property inside the limited company together. You're both equally responsible, although you might have completely different rules. But that works very well if, for example, you don't know somebody terribly well and you want to see whether the relationship is going to work. The best investor joint venture relationships are based on good dialogue, communication, and trust. And we're going to come to those 4 steps in a little while. And then the final one in my 4 types of investor is the what I call the JV business partner. So this is somebody who has a bit more of a vision. So they're looking maybe to build a portfolio, or they're looking to do more than just one project with you. I'm not saying that they have to have all the money for all those projects. Indeed, it might be a case that you both recognise that we're going to run out of money after we've used this initial pot of seed funding that we have. But there's a sense in which there's a vision there. There's a desire to work longer term to create a portfolio and to create long-term income and wealth from that joint venture partnership. So your relationship that you build with the investor is key. It always is key. But in a long-term business partnership, you have to think about other things like roles and responsibilities, who's going to be doing which parts of the business, who's going to be responsible for the finance, who's going to be responsible for the refurbs or sourcing the deals. So there's a lot that would need to be discussed and sorted. Generally, this would be a limited company where you're 50-50 directors, so you have equal responsibility and also equal ownership of the properties that are within that limited company. Now, what are the best type of investors for HMOs? So that is a really good question to ask. And I said that I would help you tonight to have a think about, of those 4 types, which one works best for HMOs? It's somebody with money, of course. Yeah, that's what we want. No, that isn't really quite what I meant. Okay, so we spoke earlier about family and friends. So I think when you're first starting to raise money for your, your business or your HMO journey, family and friends are generally the best bet. There are various legal reasons why that's the case. One of them is to do with the Consumer Credit Act, but it's because you can borrow money from family and friends, and no one can stop you. You can give a loan to your brother, your aunt, your cousin, and you don't have to have any paperwork. You can just lend them the money and say, give it to me back in 3 years' time. There's no rules and regulations about it because you know that person already. That isn't what I would suggest you do, but you can do it. I would always suggest you draw up an agreement. I would also suggest that you make it very clear what the interest rate repayments are going to be and when those are going to happen. And the key here is that this is done on a no risk or return basis. In other words, if your project doesn't work out, you still owe that person the money. You've still got to pay them back all the money plus the interest that you said you were going to do. So you've got to be absolutely sure that you can deliver that, because if not, it's going to be coming out of your own pocket. Otherwise, you could be taken to court. If they were so minded, they could take you to court and sue you for that money. So it's very important before you start to launch in that you analyze yourself. And I think that good money mindset is about having an abundant mindset and knowing that there's loads of money in the world, and some of it's even got your name on it. But also knowing that in order to get that money, you have to be responsible with it and use it wisely. So there are different ways you can repay the money. You could do a specific periodic amount, so every quarter you could pay them the money. You could give them a lump sum payment at the end of the term. It could be interest only until you have got to the point where you're then ready to repay the whole amount, the capital as well. Or it could be an interest and what's called principal amount, an interest and capital amount every single month until you've finished the project and can return their finance. So I think family and friends is a great way to start. That's how I started. I raised £30,000 from a family member, and it gave me the confidence to start to think about how I could now start to develop further relationships, stronger partnerships with people. Now, if you're going to start raising money from other people that you don't know, this is a very important part of tonight's message. And I could go into massive detail about this. Actually, what I'd recommend is you listen to a podcast of mine if you want to know more about this. Delighted that a few weeks ago I interviewed John Corey. Now, John is a very experienced, seasoned investor who knows a great deal about the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority regulations on investments. And he came on my podcast, I interviewed him and really illuminated the whole topic. So go away and have a listen to that podcast if you want to know more, if you're looking to raise larger sums of money from other people. But I'm going to just touch on those rules tonight, just so that you understand what is considered legal and what's considered illegal. So if you're raising less than £100,000 from somebody, the key, and if you don't know them already, so they're not family and friends, the key is to make sure that they are either a high net worth or a sophisticated investor. This is to protect you and to protect them. Now, in order to ensure that they are a sophisticated or high net worth investor, they have to be self-certified or independently certified. And one of the documents that I'm going to share with you a little bit later on is the document from the FCA regulations that has the wording plus the area for their signature on it for them to be able to self-certify. And it also gives information about how they go about being certified. Are you certifiable, sir? Oh, I most definitely am. But that's something totally different. But in the document, it's very important that you know your customer. This is about money laundering, and it's also about making sure that the risks of this particular investment have been laid out to the individual, and that you're not borrowing money from what's called an ordinary retail investor who is not high net worth or is not a sophisticated investor. Now, one of the things is you must make sure that you outline the key risks for that investor. And what the FCA have said is that you have to also carry out a preliminary assessment of suitability. In other words, that your HMO investment is going to be suitable for that investor to be able to invest in. And you will need to justify that. Now, it could be it's suitable for them to invest in because you've got evidence that in that particular marketplace, there's a huge demand for rooms, and you know for certain that if you were to buy this particular property and develop it in this way, even at, let's say, 85 or 90% occupancy rates, you'd still be making X amount of profit. You might also have some experience at looking at how to add value, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight as well. So there are lots of ways in which you can make sure that the assessment that you carry out on that person and on your potential investment works. But that's important to know that that is now an important part of FCA regulations. Now, the other thing, which if you're on Facebook, and probably most of us are on Facebook, you might have seen people promoting their wares. So I've got a couple of adverts here. I don't even know these people. I don't think they're on the webinar tonight, but if they are, just to warn you that you are not allowed to promote these as investments. That is an absolute no-no when it comes to the FCA. These are individuals that, because you haven't assessed their suitability, because you're effectively advertising to the whole of Facebook, you don't know that these investments are suitable for those individuals. So it's very important we recognise that. Now, One of the things is that commercial and industrial property is excluded from the regulations. So if you're doing commercial and industrial, it doesn't count for this, but this is for residential property, particularly when you're borrowing under £100,000. So it is banned now to do promotions such as this. If you see these promotions on Facebook, ignore them, bypass them. It's possible that the FCA will be investigating them anyway. You mustn't do it. You have to know your customer, you have to understand their position, and as long as they have self-certified or been independently certified, you can work with them. That's the good news. Now, this is the actual wording. So I'm not going to, as I say, I'm not going to go into massive detail about it tonight, but this is what the FCA said. We consider SISs, which is speculative illiquid securities, we consider that they are high risk and opaque, in other words, not terribly clear, where an issuer, so that would be me as the, let's say, the property developer, uses some or all of the funds raised to buy or fund the construction of property. So this is the sentence. In other words, what they're saying is that we believe that when you're raising money from somebody you don't know, and you're using that money to construct or refurb a property, we consider that to be high risk. And because of that, we're putting in stronger regulations to protect people from losing their money. Because there have been some big cases in the past of lots and lots of money having been lost, and those individuals, those investors have, you know, really suffered a great deal of loss as a result. So I think that's where we have to be just really, really clear. Now, Sarah's put in a great question. What's the best way of letting people know you're open to working with investors without contravening PS 13/3? So, Sarah, what you should really do is, if somebody is interested in working with you, the first thing is to get them to self-certify, or for you to tell them how they can certify. And at the end, I'll share with you our document that tells you how to do it. Now, if they're already known to you, they're a family or friend member, you can borrow the money. You don't have to self-certify. Although, to be on the safe side, I would suggest you probably still would. And remember, if somebody's lending you more than £100,000, then this is under £100,000. These speculative illiquid securities only count under £100,000. So somebody, if you're lucky enough to meet somebody who's got £150,000, like Charlotte did, you can use that money in the same way, because they're considered to be high net worth investors who know what they're doing. So what is a high net worth individual? So this is somebody who really has any of these three. They have an annual income of more than £100,000. They have investable net assets of more than £250,000. Now that must not include their own property, their own house, any pensions, or any insurance which they might get, you know, if somebody in their family died, for example. So their investable net assets, effectively, really, it's like cash or capital that they have that they can then use to invest. These are still considered to be retail clients, but because they have £100,000 annual income and investable net assets, they're considered to be high net worth. Now, sophisticated investors. So this is somebody who has a bit more understanding, maybe, and knowledge. And again, apologies for lots of words on the screen. This is going to go up on our YouTube channel, by the way, this webinar. I hope we're live. I'll have to check that in a moment. If we're not, we will put the recording up on the YouTube channel. So you can read the detail there. But a sophisticated investor is deemed to be somebody who's got enough experience to be able to invest in something that's a bit more risky, like an HMO. So they need to be one of these types of people. They need to be a member of a network or syndicate of business angels, and they need to have been so for at least the last 6 months. Okay, so if they've been a member of a network of business angels or property angels, and there are those kind of groups out there, for 6 months, they would count to be a sophisticated investor. They need to have made more than one investment in an unlisted company in the 2 years before the date that you're asking them to self-certify. They themselves need to have been working in a professional capacity in the private equity sector, or providing finance in some way for small and medium enterprises, or they are or have been in the last 2 years a director of a company with an annual turnover of at least £1 million. So these are, if you like, the criteria for somebody being a sophisticated investor. Now, Sarah, she's added to her question. I'll come back to you now, Sarah. You meant, how can you let people know on social media that you're open to working with investors without promoting it? You have to be super careful. What I would do is a lot of soft stuff about the deals that you've done, the money that you've made. When people start to say on Facebook, though, talk to me if you're interested in making money. I can do a deal like this with you. I can find property like this for you. We can do something together. That is considered to be illegal because it's considered to be a promotion. So you have to come away from doing that. However, in the course of you telling people what you do and what you've achieved and who you are, and Sarah, you do some lovely posts on Facebook. You know, you can express your values. You can express what you're aiming to do as a business. You can say to people that you are developing the way that you work with sophisticated and high net worth investors. You don't need to say any more than that, but you can do some posts on that. What is a sophisticated investor? You could put this up as a post. The other thing is thinking about JVs. JVs are much more secure because you have a limited company in which you're investing. So it might be that rather than just looking for cash to put into the business, you start to look at how you could explore working with somebody on more of a joint venture basis. And it might be on a short term, it might be on a long term, but that's much more secure and that's therefore much safer under FCA rules and regulations. But the FCA are now investigating and really clamping down on this. They did some consultation that has just come into force, and the consultation lasts for about 9 months. And it's really clear that they're trying to protect people from what they consider to be scams. And I don't think as property professionals, we want to be seen as scammers, do we? So how we speak about this, how we use social media is key to making sure that we stay the right side of the law. Now you might say to me, but Wendy, you know, how can I find these investors? Where am I going to find people like this? Well, let me tell you, these people probably live down your street. They probably live around the corner from your nan. They probably run a corner shop. They are all over the place. You would be astonished to know how many people in your vicinity, unless you live on a hill in Wales, but in your vicinity will either be high net worth or a sophisticated investor. So what does this mean for you though? Well, it means you probably have to up your game. It means you have to become as professional as they are. And there's a few things you can do to do that. So when you go out and you start to connect with business networks, maybe angel networks, private members clubs, auto, you know, car or specialist clubs, investment circles, friendship groups where there are, you know, they sort of meet around a particular interest. Sports clubs can be very good for these kind of people. Your family, have you thought about who in your family or in your family's family might be interested? Now, there are other places as well, like peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding platforms, and they too are regulated by the FCA. They have to fit in with these particular rules as well. So if you were to put a deal up on a peer-to-peer lending platform or crowdfunding platform, there would be certain rules and regulations that you would have to go through to be able to put that up and to make it work. But really the point I'm saying is that these people are out there, they're looking for somebody like you who's got experience and knowledge, who's got some time and has got some drive. And by you getting out there and sharing what you do, sharing your business card, there's no harm in having a telephone coffee or a Zoom call, or even a coffee actually. I think you can do that, can't you, in England? I'm always, every day I have to check on the regulations. Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to meet this person? But I think we are still, aren't we, up to 6 people? Anyway, check it out. Make sure you do the COVID regulations. But assuming you can in your neck of the woods, there's no harm in going out and having a coffee with somebody, or like I say, having a Zoom coffee and explaining what you do and who you are. And there's a couple of forms you'd like them to fill in, and then you can start to tell them about some potential ideas that could work for both of you. That is not deemed to be a promotion, and that that is understood to be the right course of action, so that you make sure that you are getting the right paperwork from that individual, and then you can raise money for your investments. Okay, I'm just going to pause it there for a moment before we go into the 4 aspects to an investor relationship. I think I told you we're going to go quite quickly through this, didn't we? Does anybody have any questions so far, or anything which you're bamboozled by, or feeling overwhelmed by? Or maybe it's that little chimp in your brain saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, it's too difficult, it's too hard. So just have a think. If there's anything you want to bring up, put it in the chat panel. Let's kind of deal with it. Let's address it. Sophie, yes, they probably would fall foul of the FCA rules, because what you haven't done is made sure the investor is a high net worth or sophisticated investor, and you've got to do that first, because you've got to assess the suitability of that deal for that person. So it'd be far better for you to say something like, if you're looking for a great return on your money and you haven't yet found the best way ahead, you might be interested in investing in HMOs, let's have a complimentary chat. I'd love you to call me and let's have a chat. Because then what you can do is, you can, when you have that chat with the person, you can kind of answer some of those questions and say, we're going to have to make sure we go through this process to make sure that we're doing this legally. And then once you've got that person, once you have the details of that particular individual, and let's say they say, oh, I'm not sophisticated, I'm not a high net worth individual, then you have to say to them, I'm very sorry, I wouldn't be able to do any deals with you unless you can give me more than £100,000, which is probably unlikely. So yes, absolutely, that would be illegal. And again, you'll see this probably happening on Facebook, but the FCA police are out there. Yeah, I get a lot of them on LinkedIn as well, and it's very dangerous, unfortunately, very, very dangerous. So Ria, I'm going to share with you in a moment what information, the key paperwork that you need to look like a professional, to demonstrate your credibility and your knowledge with an investor, so that you can go out and with those people who contact you, whether sophisticated or high net worth, raise that money legally to use for your HMO. So thank you for the question. I'll come back to that in a moment, if that's okay. So let's just quickly think about, what is it that makes the investor relationship work? Now, this kind of diagram is really applicable whether you are raising cash, whether you're working with a family member, whether you're working with somebody who's a sophisticated and high net worth business person or a pensioner. It doesn't matter. But the key is that each of these steps is crucial to making that whole relationship work. So the first one is credibility and security. And here are all the 4 different ones, and I'm going to go through these step by step right now. So credibility and security. So you might say, well, I haven't got any experience. You have. You just might not have thought that it was actually applicable to property. But I haven't got any HMOs, Wendy. Okay, but you have got other experience. Have you got work experience? Have you got life experience? Everybody has got something they can bring. And when I first started raising money for property, when I first met Mark, my very first JV partner, he had more experience than I did. He sat me down and said, Wendy, I've been to see the solicitor, and here's the joint venture agreement I think we should look at. I didn't even know that's what you should do. I had no idea. I didn't know how to set up a limited company partnership. He did. So what did I have? What did I bring to the table? Well, I brought to the table some knowledge of property. Yes, that was true. I did have that. But actually, I had experience of life. I had experience in dealing with people. I could communicate well. I could stick to deadlines. I could deliver. And for him, many of the aspects of working with a partner were not about the money or the knowledge, but it was about the person. And that's why our partnership has lasted so well, because there's a mutual respect there. So my experience, while it wasn't so much to do with property, his was more, it was still experience that was valid. And you know, sometimes I say to people, because I do half an hour free consultation calls for people who are thinking about HMOs or maybe stuck a bit in their journey. And this comes up a lot. And quite often what I'll say to somebody is write down 50 things about you why somebody should invest with you. And they might not be all to do with property. They might be to do with personal qualities that you have, or personal skills that you have, or work specialism or something. But 50 things, because that is very powerful for your own identity, money mindset. So again, knowledge, same kind of thing. Your attitude, this counts massively in investors wanting to work with you. Your commitment to this. Are you following the next shiny penny, or are you committed to this? Are you going to make it work? Now, there's a few things that I would recommend that you prepare, and in a moment I'm going to share what those things are. But I do think if you've got case studies, or you've got potential case studies that you can show to an investor and show them some numbers, show them some figures on a spreadsheet, on a PowerPoint presentation, it makes it much more tangible for them to understand what it is that you're presenting to them. Any testimonials that you've got, or any current deals that are going through, or current deals that you're even looking at that maybe you can't yet afford to invest in because you haven't got the money. But these are all things that are evidence of credibility and security to your potential investor or JV partner. Now, there are lots of different ways you can secure that property for them in their name. You could have a first charge, a second charge, an AN1 form, which your solicitor can register at the land registry. You can have an RX1, which is a restriction on the property, a UN1, which is a unilateral notice. You could set up a contract. You could have a declaration of trust, and you could have more overarching security, which would be an SPV, which I've mentioned, or a limited company. There's lots of ways you can give your investor security on the property. Step number two is to have a clear purpose. So you've got your figures, lay them out clearly, and let the investor pick them apart a bit, ask some questions about it, determine some of the fine detail, and explain how this meets their criteria. How does your project help them? What's the aim of the project? What is it you're trying to achieve? And what's the timescale for that? What are the numbers? What are the risks? You need to outline the risks as well for the investor, so it's really clear and above board. Number three is communication and commitment. What we always do with our joint ventures or our investors is always have a weekly call. It's what I call having a client relationship manager. You've probably got one of them with your bank, or maybe in another service that you've had. You'll have somebody who's your client relationship manager. Now, that treats the relationship as professional and serious and committed. And even if it's somebody who isn't yet ready to actually hand any money over, or ready to do any deals, or maybe hasn't quite seen a deal that ticks their boxes, this shows professionalism on your part to keep in contact, to maintain the relationship. So other paperwork that you'll need to produce would be plans for the project, the agreement, the structure of the relationship, and possibly a partnership agreement. If you're going to do an SPV or joint venture, always a good idea to have an overarching partnership agreement that details who's going to do what and when. And also you can think about whose power team you're going to use. Is it going to be their solicitor, your solicitor, their mortgage broker, your mortgage broker, or you might get some new people all together. Number four is clarity of entry and exit. So when is the money needed? Do we need to set up a joint bank account in order to transact that money, or is there a different route by which we can get it to the HMO? Again, the structure of the relationship will come in here, depending on whether you have borrowed the money from an individual or whether you are using it as within a joint venture SPV partnership. Do you need anybody else to be involved in that? Now, other investors being involved when you've borrowed money is a little bit of a tricky grey area, so I would just be careful of that. Ideally, you're safest if you just use money from one person. Alternatively, if you think that you're going to need more than one person to invest, I would recommend that you get onto a crowdfunding platform or peer-to-peer lending platform. Those platforms will fall into the new FCA regulations, but they will guide you through it. So that's another way of raising money if you're going to use crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending. Now, the exit is a big question, and this comes down to how you can add value. And while we finish tonight, I'm going to go through our clipped, very special, clipped acronym to take you through how you can add maximum value. This is a big question that people often ask me, is how can I get my money out? If I've borrowed investor finance and I need to repay them, it's going to be really scary if the HMO doesn't value up. And if it doesn't value up and I don't get my money out, I can't repay them. So it's a big question for people. So we're going to share with you our clipped model for getting the maximum value out. And when the exit will be executed. So are you going to borrow the money for 1 year, 2 years, maybe 5 years? It doesn't have to be just for the length of the project. And at the end, you should have an evaluation. So evaluate how that project went. How did your investor feel? What could you learn from that process? And what did they learn from the process? And the question is, would you do it again? And you know it's worked if they say, yeah, I'd love to do it again. So I'd recommend you think like a professional. So I always would do a PowerPoint presentation to outline the deal to an investor. But before I've done that, because of these new regulations, we have some paperwork that we'll email to you. And it is the definition of the certified high net worth and sophisticated investors, plus self-certification form or a certifiable form for that individual. If you'd like a copy of that, just stay on till the end and we will get that out to you. So you can, that comes as part of our gift to you tonight. And you could use that then to certify those individuals you want to work with. You also need a loan agreement. So if you're borrowing cash from somebody, whether it's a family friend or if it's somebody who falls into the high net worth or sophisticated investor bracket, the Law Depot, I put the link on the bottom of the screen there, is a really useful resource of all these kind of forms and contracts and all sorts of other things you need. So if you pop down to the lawdepot.co.uk, you'll get anything that you need from there. Okay, just quickly looking at some questions. Do you have to have a separate agreement per property? So Sarah, we need to pick that apart a bit. Do you mean one investor looking to invest in different properties? Are you looking at lots of different investors in different properties? If you just clarify the question, that'd be brilliant, thank you. The key is you need to think like a professional. You're now going up a gear in your investing, and part of your money mindset, part of the chimp that tells you there's not enough money in the world, you're never going to do this, this is awful, who said you could do this, is impossible, that you're going to start to say, shut up and sit down and go back in your corner, in your cage. You have to sometimes be very forceful like that with your chimp. Now you're going to say, actually, I'm going to raise the money, and because doing this is, I have to do this professionally because of the guidance and because of the regulations, I'm going to think like a professional. I'm going to grow myself. I'm going to become a professional investable property investor, and it will raise your game, and it's a good thing. Now, one of the other things that will raise your game is knowing a bit more about how you can make this work for HMOs. So just a very, very quick plug for our 2-day event. We're running, every month we run a 2-day HMO intensive. Our next one is on the 18th and 19th of October. And then we've got one coming up in November as well. It's over the weekend, so you don't have to give up any time during the week. So just a very, very quick plug. If you'd like to come, we still have some places left for the October event. We go through all 5 steps in our 5-step system. Tonight, we've obviously been looking a little bit at the using other people's money section in our fund it step. But as you can see, there's lots more to our 2-day event. If you haven't already been on the 2-day event, you will absolutely love it. We do lots of games and activities, and it's fun. It's all online right now because we can't do it any other way. And we've got some goodies to give to you as well. You get a copy of each of my books, and you get a copy of our killer HMO starter pack, which contains loads and loads of freebies for you to literally plug and play and get started with HMOs if you haven't already. If you would like to know more about that, please message us in the chat panel, and then after tonight's webinar, Ian or I will call you and just see if those 2 days are right for you. And if we feel that you're ready to do it and you want to go ahead, then we can get you booked on. But we would love to see you at one of our 2-day events. So let me just tell you about one of the HMOs that I did in a JV deal, so you can see the kind of figures that we're looking at and how this can work. So this is a 3-bed semi in Crewe in Cheshire, which is where I invest. Bought it for 100,000. The refurb cost was 55, as you can see. We get about just under £2,500 per month income, and the profit is about £1,280 a month. So we split that 50-50. So I get 50 and my business partner gets 50. It was revalued at £210,000, and so we left in £1,000, yes, which we could cope with. We each put in effectively £500 into that, and so our return on investment is infinite, and our yield is 18% on the income. So it's a really, really, really good deal. But there are certain key things to remember when you're doing these deals, because getting a value that allows you to take all your money out certainly makes it easier to keep investing. So this is the clipped model. Woohoo! What is the clipped model, I hear you say? Right, we've got a few minutes when I can go through this. So C is for cheap. And I don't just mean cheap because all the other properties in the street are cheap. I mean, this is definitely a below market value property. You have to do your due diligence and understanding of whether it truly is below market value, or if it's just, you know, knocked down because it's rather dilapidated. So C is for cheap. And by the way, on our 2-day course, another plug, we will show you how to find these properties, because the first step is finding it, which I love. Second one, L for layout. Substantially changing the layout of your building, either by adding on suites or adding extra aspects to the building, or changing things around significantly, maybe moving the kitchen from the back room into the middle room. This can really add value because you can add more rooms, you can add more income. And if you're going for an HMO that you want to get commercial finance on, changing the layout is often a key that will make the valuer think, yeah, this is never going to be a family HMO. We'll value it as a commercial enterprise. The interior. So you can see the top picture. This is a property of ours in Crewe, really pretty horrific state, and that's what it looks like now. So changing the interior. We actually did a refurb of a property in Stoke. I was amazed when the valuer came round. He can't quite remember the figures, but I know we got all the money out of this deal, and the reason was that he said that the interior was so beautiful. So I was quite surprised. I didn't think that interiors would have such an impact, but they can make a big impact if you do them beautifully. Planning permission. So taking a property up beyond 7 bedrooms or more that will require planning, or if you're doing an extension or you're doing something that triggers planning permission, this will add value to your property. Now, of course, it's going to take more money, usually, to do it. And in fact, this is the house that I showed you very early on in the presentation. This is my second HMO. This is a 7-bed HMO. And what we did was we did a loft conversion. So you could say that that was change of layout. And we also extended into, there was a workshop that was attached to the back of the house, a bit like a garage, but it was a workshop. We knocked through from the kitchen to the workshop, created another ensuite bedroom downstairs, and so utilised that framework of the building that was already there. And again, that property valued up, and we got all our money out of that one as well. Fifth thing is problems. Does anybody know what this is in the picture? What's that horrible green yucky plant called? I'm sure you've heard of this. Ria, you are right on the money there. Japanese knotweed. Oh, terrible. You really don't want this. But other problems that you can have in property, structural problems, or we've got properties that have structural problems, that have subsidence problems, Japanese knotweed, roof problems. As long as the price reflects what it's going to cost for you to deal with those problems, often other people go, oh, I don't want to deal with it, it's too difficult, too challenging, too stressful, I'm going to walk away. But actually, in dealing with the problems and putting it right, you can add a lot of value because you've got it for a better price in the first place. Number 6 is E for extend. So you might want to think about extending your property on the back to add another room with an ensuite. This is one of the properties where we did this. This is just a picture of the plans. We extended, it was a garage that was extended, and we got permitted development to go into the garage. It's still attached to the HMO, so it's sort of, it's a self-contained area on the back of the HMO, but it still has access to the communal facilities. So it's kind of self-contained, but also part of the HMO. So they said we could do this through permitted development. And again, that gives us, the main house was 5 bedrooms, and this was an extra 6th bedroom. You could, of course, D for develop. And this is where my good friend Ian comes in, because he's recently done a development where he's developed the side of his HMO. So there's a very fast run through the clip model. But could you just very briefly tell us about Airport Apartments, Ian, where you've extended on the side here, haven't you? You developed it.
We have indeed, yes. So from the green front door to the right was the original house, which was a 3-bedroom ex-council house, and where the extension in the left, that was actually a double garage. So massive site. We wanted to, we applied for planning permission for a 7-bed on this particular property, but we got refused. There was a bit of a planning delay as well, as you're aware of, Wendy, and we ended up with 6 bedrooms. So I got it completed in the last few weeks and refinanced as well, and the figures were pretty good, I have to say. So for those that like the detail and analysing the numbers, we purchased it for 278. We budgeted 150k refurb, and we used £100,000 of investor finance to do the build. We paid that investor back 6%, so he get paid back 6k plus his original investment. We got it commercially revalued, and it came in nice and high at 520k. In fact, the valuer said it was one of the best HMOs he'd ever seen. So I think when you've got your brand and you've got your values, you should always stick to that. So we left 38k in the deal, which worked out at a 69% ROI. And it's because it's a 6-bed, it cash flows at just over £2,000 a month. So very happy with that. And you would do lots of them with that type of ROI, wouldn't you? 69%.
And what happened to the investor? So what you've spoken to him. What's he going to do with the £100,000?
So now he's just asking if we can do another deal. So at the minute, I've viewed 2 properties today, and one of them's going to auction. So if I can get it at auction at the right money, then I'll redeploy the 100k. Now, a little tip for everyone as well. He was actually due to be paid back in December, and because I'm paying him back early, I've offered to pay the interest that he would miss out on. So we had an agreement till December, and I said, look, I'll pay you your full interest up to the end of the year. But of course, you know as well as I do, Wendy, when you try and pay investors their money back, they don't want it because they can't get a return like that currently in the bank. And you and I were laughing, weren't we, the other day when we were speaking about £10,000 in savings, which get, what was it, 18 pence or something for a month as interest. So these deals are out there, and at the minute, no one's getting a return on their money. So that's what makes investing in HMOs and property in general a tasty proposition.
Yes. Now, you had to get planning permission on this, didn't you, because of the extension?
We did, yeah. And it's a good question, actually, because we went straight for 7. We got knocked back. So we should have went in under permitted development and went for 6 and then tried to add the 7th. So the mistake we made, we went straight to 7. But ultimately, it still looks fantastic. The property's full. We're getting cracking rents for it as well. So I think.
So Ian, just quickly, what was the total start time of the project? Because I know this one had lots and lots of problems. What was the total sort of start time from beginning to finish?
To be honest, we bought this and we offered on it in January 2018, right? And they basically rejected our offer and they sold it to someone else. And they couldn't raise the funds, so they remarketed it. We went in again and re-offered. Cut a long story short, it fell twice. We offered on it in July 2018. We got a mortgage in January 2019, and we started doing the build, and then we get knocked back for planning. We went to appeal, we get knocked back again. So we'd already converted the original part of the house into an HMO, and the conversion, if you like.
So lots of learning for you then, wasn't it? I think you know, I know at times you were literally tearing your hair out, which is
look what's happened to me.
You are where you are today.
It's fail out now, you know. But you've got.
But maybe it was worth it in the end.
Oh, absolutely! What an asset! Fantastic.
Yeah, it is brilliant. That's great. Thank you. So we're gonna wrap up in about 1 minute. But before we do, I always like to ask people, what now? So what are you going to do now? So I'd like you, a bit of a challenge to everybody who's still on the line this evening. I would like you to, in the chat panel, write down one action that you can take as a result of tonight's training. We promised you training. I believe we've delivered to what we promised. You've probably still got loads of questions. You probably always will have loads of questions. You can get a lot of them answered by working with us, by coming on our 2-day event. But I've plugged that already, so I'm not going to go overboard with that. You could also register for our next week's free training, which Ian is running, on how to find deals in the current climate. So if your challenge is not just about the finance, but it's also about the deals, you want to register for that webinar, and we'll send out the link in the follow-up email that you get after tonight's training when we finish the webinar. So in the chat panel, write down one action that you can take as a result of tonight's training. Who are you going to speak to? What are you going to do? Where are you going to start? Let's make a commitment to taking some action. So Sarah said she's going to get a pack together to show her friend. Oh, that's very exciting for investment. Gemma's going to compile a list of 50 reasons why I'm worth investing in. You absolutely are, Gemma, 100%. I would say 110%, but Andy always tells me that's mathematically impossible. Who else is going to take action after tonight's training? What is it you're going to do? What is it you're going to start to do? Are you going to challenge your own money mindset? Shan says that he's particularly keen to do commercial HMO evaluations in Article 4 area with very high HMO demand. I have a few HMOs in that area, but not done a commercial or large 6-bed HMO yet. So that's a really exciting step, Shan. Yes, please keep in touch with us and let us know how you get on. Jackie's going to put the pack together and get a few people to read it to start a discussion. That's exactly what Charlotte did. She put her investor pack together, PowerPoint presentation, took it to this guy that she knew was a business owner, kind of hoping that he might say he would invest, but she didn't know if he would. And he ended up being the investor who gave her the money. So that it works. Sophie going to make a list of family members that I have been afraid to speak to. Oh, well done, Sophie. That takes a real step of courage. That's brilliant. You just never know where it will lead. And it's just softly. It's a win-win. You're not selling them anything. You're just telling them what you're doing. Sarah's going to look at how she can let people know that you're open to investors without promoting. Fabulous. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure there's more that after tonight's training you'll think about as well, things that you'll start to kind of percolate through and think, oh, we could do that, we could do that. Money mindset is a really big one. I really emphasize that because I think it's such an important part of all our growth and learning as investors. And you keep working on that. That's really important for you to believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing. When you're getting these kind of returns from property, you can help other people and you can help yourself. This is what Bill Gates said about Microsoft. Our success has really been based on partnerships from the very beginning. And if you're not a Microsoft fan, this is what Steve Jobs said. My model for business is the Beatles. They balanced each other and the total was greater than the sum of the parts. That's how I see business. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. Don't try and do this on your own. Give that value and you will get some value back too. So that is myself and Ian for this evening, HMO Success. Do go on our website, join the Facebook group if you're not already a member. It's been fantastic to be with you this evening. As soon as the recording is rendered, Sophie, we will post it to YouTube, and I'll put a link in the email. So you'll get probably an email in, well, I don't know, an hour or so from us, or it might be tomorrow. I'll check on that, but I'll make sure that you get the all the information that I mentioned, the pack, the documentation, and the link to the YouTube so you can watch it again. I hope you all have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please do join us next week. It'd be lovely to see you again. We're here to help you, to serve you, and to make sure you make money from HMOs.